Hi, I'm Thomas, the Accidental DM, your source for variety in tabletop RPGs, and today we're continuing in our series on how to play the 2d20 version of Achtung Cthulhu by Modiphius. Particularly today we're going to be looking at character creation and how that works, kind of the different options, some of the choices. We won't be able to go into absolutely everything because that would be an extremely long video, but I will kind of point you to kind of where to look for specific information as well as kind of the general overall structure and kind of making some of those choices and looking at a couple of details, a couple of examples of how some of those things kind of play themselves out. So basically though, it's kind of a 6-step process, and for the most part I think as you're kind of learning the system, it's kind of really best to kind of stick with that as much as possible, just kind of follow it along as we kind of go through until you're kind of very familiar with the system, and then you can start kind of breaking off because you've got this idea that you already want to do, and so you just kind of start plugging things in. But for now we're just going to kind of be looking at how it is simple, what's the easiest way to kind of make a character to get into role-playing in Achtung Cthulhu as fast as possible. So one of the first things we want to do is take a look then at the character sheet itself. It's fairly straightforward, as we kind of see kind of at the top half then of the character sheet. We have kind of things that we expect, kind of a lot of the general stats and kind of characteristics that we kind of expect: name, nationality, rank. Though the directions for building a character don't talk about rank. Rank is more of one of those things that's going to be for kind of leveling up. Then you have archetype, background characteristics, some of the personal truths and scars, stress, language, kind of courage, armor, and fortune. Kind of those are the resistances that one would have depending upon it's a physical attack or a mental attack, on the kind of injuries. That kind of rounds out kind of this kind of top part of this. The only things that won't be specifically addressed in character creation are going to be those injuries and scars, because and rank, because those are things that kind of take place during play or kind of as a part of kind of leveling up your character as you're kind of going through. At the lower half of this first page of the character sheet, then we see kind of the stats of what we kind of expect. You see the attributes and skills: agility, brawn, coordination, insight, reason, and will, the attributes, and we'll talk a little bit about what those mean in a minute. You have academia, athletics, engineering, fighting, medicine, observation, persuasion, etc. Kind of as the skills, and those two key components are important kind of really throughout the game. So this is the sheet you'll be looking at the most, is because it's the attributes and the skills that are the important part then for the skill test to be able to kind of succeed at some of the things then that you're wanting to be able to do. So that's kind of the first page. On the second page then, we see then at the very top we have the kind of the equipment that you're going to have. These would be the possessions, and we'll see a little bit about that as we go through character creation. The weapons, again, like guns and things that you might have access to, explosives you might have access to in order to have the game work. Small kind of little section over on the side then on biography and talents. One of the things that I really do appreciate in this character sheet, as opposed to some of the others that Modiphius has put out with 2d20, is that it actually gives you a decent space to kind of write out the effects. So if you're not all that familiar with it, especially when you're kind of new, you're not you're not always having to constantly look, well, what does it say in the book, in the player's guide? No, you can just kind of write those out right there, so you've kind of got them for what you need. So I think that's a great thing kind of do for character sheets, especially for kind of newer players. And then there is a third sheet. Not everyone would necessarily need this or need it right away, and that's kind of then for the skills that you might have as a part of your character. And so we kind of see that kind of how that works out. So you have the name, the skill, the difficulty, the cost, duration, effects, and momentum, spends and things like that. A section for the power. Again, it's kind of nice. I wish it was maybe a little bit bigger to kind of be able to write the effects in, but I think it gives you at least enough space to at least shorthand kind of so you'll know exactly what it is that you're kind of looking for. So let's just kind of jump in and kind of take a look then at some of the various attributes then that are going to be important to Achtung Cthulhu, the 2d20 version of it. So with agility, we're talking really about movement and dexterity. Brawn is more about kind of the physical fitness and endurance that you're going to have. Coordination is kind of motor skills, precision, kind of that hand-eye coordination stuff. Reason is, well, logic and reason, of course. Insight is about perception, instinct, and noticing kind of in people, a little bit of a kind of a psychological element to it as well. And then there's also will, which is about kind of internal fortitude that one has. It's going to be very important, particularly with using and combating then different types of spells as well. Now, the numbers are going to vary as we go throughout then the process of character creation, but it will be ultimately between 6 and 12. And as I kind of made mention mentioned a little bit earlier, GMs will use these attributes as part of any skill test. So the attribute plus the skill with the difficulty is going to be setting then what's going to be needed in order for success to happen. And remember, with 2d20, it's the target number or lower is counted as a success. And so you want to kind of add those numbers up. And so that's why attributes are kind of important, and you want to have a higher number so it makes the ability then of that combination of the attribute and skill number to be higher, so it makes it easier to kind of roll lower on a 2d20. Now, with all of these, they're all going to be starting then at a 6. So that's kind of the starting attribute, just write 6 in every single one of them as you start off. And as I said, they will kind of fluctuate and kind of change as we go through. Attributes. We want to kind of take a look then now at the archetypes. In our archetypes, then we're given several different kind of choices to choose from. Some of them are a little bit more obvious in terms of what they are, but let's just kind of talk a little bit about each of them real quick. Your choices are a boffin, which for those who aren't as adept in kind of British English lingo, that's kind of more of a scientist, engineer type of person. Maybe a tinkerer might be the way that some Americans might talk about it. Commander is a soldier, but a soldier with some leadership qualities. Then you have a con artist, who's a manipulator, or someone who knows how to get things. So if you need this one special part and you're not quite sure how to be able to get it, whether good means or illegal means, they're the ones that are going to be able to find those things for you. There's the grease monkey, mechanic or a driver. There's an infiltrator, kind of your classic kind of spy archetype. An investigator, again, kind of obvious, but very much kind of a person then that's kind of looking at things both in a physical capacity as well as kind of in a mental capacity in search of trying to find answers to whatever. You have the occultist, which is about magic and research as well. Then you have the soldier, kind of another very, very obvious one as well. Now, based upon whichever archetype you choose, whether it's a boffin, commander, grease monkey, soldier, whomever, each of those is going to have then an attribute and skill bonus that's related to that archetype. So you just kind of add some numbers up to that. We'll take a look at one in just a second to kind of see what I'm talking about. But you'd add those bonuses then to your attributes and to your skills. And then you also want to choose then a focus then that's based upon one of the ones that's given you as an option. The focuses are important because they're things that are going to be able to increase your range of critical successes. And so if you have then a focus in something, whatever that number is that you ultimately have then in your skill roll, that then number is where the new range for your critical successes are. Because remember, with 2d20, whenever you roll a 1, that's a critical success. But let's say you have a 3 in one of your skills, but you also then have a corresponding focus that goes with that. That means that a 1, 2, or 3 on a d20 is going to get you then that extra success, that critical success that you're wanting to kind of look for. And so that's why they're kind of important. And then you want to choose a talent that's based upon the archetype, and that's going to kind of be listed down below, and then also the belongings that are specific to that. Now, if you're wondering to just kind of know a little bit about what these focuses are, you can kind of take a look at them on pages 48 to 51. So let's kind of jump over there and take a quick look at what some of those are, just so you can have an idea of that. So let's see, 48 to 51. All right, and so kind of in each little section that we kind of see here real quick, let me zoom in just a little bit so you can get a little bit better of a look. So just as an example of in the academia one for focuses, just so you can kind of see what some of those are. You have art covers knowledge of individual pieces of art, cryptography covers knowledge of codes and ciphers, finance covers knowledge of trade and banking, history covers knowledge of historical events, linguistics, a study of language, etc. And then we can kind of see some corresponding ones as well over in the engineering section. We have architecture, combat engineering, electronics, just so you can get a little bit of feel of what some of those focuses are. And those are going to be things then that you want to know a little bit about, but it's really one of the things that the GM is going to need to know in order to kind of make those connections for when you can use then that particular focus or not. So just something else to kind of keep in mind as you're going through. And then while we're here as well, we might as well go ahead and take a look then at one specific of the archetypes that are there as well, so we can kind of see what is then I'm kind of talking about a little bit on that. And so we want to take a look then at. Let's take a look then at the infiltrator, which is on page 58, right at the top. Okay, so infiltrator. So we give a description of what the infiltrator is. So each of them is going to have this. An infiltrator is talented at getting into places they shouldn't. They excel at evading detection, bypassing security, and grabbing valuables and secrets from secure locations amid the clamor of warfare, and the ability to move unseen and unheard, given the crucial advantage. And so we see then the bonuses to attributes and skills here. So in the case of the infiltrator, your agility is going to go up 2 and your coordination is going to go up 2, whereas your brawn and insight is going to go up 1. And then in your skills, you're going to be adding a +2, +1, +2, +1, +2, +1. 1 + 2 + 1 + 2 + 2 + 1 + 2 + 2 + 1 + 1 + 2. No, but just basically then each of those then areas is going to get an increase then of what it is that you kind of need in order to kind of have those skills. And then from that then, we noticed then we looked down at focuses, it's choose any 2 focuses from either athletics, fightings, or stealth skills. So we can go and take a look then at what those are. And so we can kind of jump back over to, let's just say for the sake of argument, let's see if we can find fighting real quick. And we can choose 2, but in this case we'll just look at the ones that are in fighting. So I believe those were over on page 50 or so. Let's see, it's resilience, medicine, observation, fighting. Here we go. So we get a look here. Fighting, the skills covers your ability to fight. So focusing either hand-to-hand combat, melee weapons, handguns, close quarters, rifles, heavy weapons, threat awareness, or exotic, which covers weird experimental weapon. Basically anything that either Noctwolf is going to have or the Black Sun is going to have. So you can have some access to those. So those are the focuses you can kind of choose for this particular one of the infiltrator. Okay, and the next thing we're going to kind of take a look then at is going to be at nationalities. Now, nationalities then, I think of them more as part of kind of role-playing and a part of the backstory of the NPC. But there are then some truths that are going to kind of be associated with nationalities. And we're given a really rather extensive, large list of them. The primary list is on page 62, and the secondary list is kind of on 63. Now, the thing about these particular nationalities is going to give you, as I said, it gives you a connection to your homeland, but it's also going to give you then access then to languages. And so as part of one of your truths that you're going to be creating as a part then of your character creation in this next part on nationality is you choose one of them that's associated then as a language from your chosen nationality. And so we can always think, English, in England you're going to get English, in German you're going to get German, in France you're going to get French. But when we go then to some of the other choices that we have as well on the secondary list, so for instance, remember Britain at this time is still an empire. And so if one of your characters you want to play an Indian, then you would have then access to some other language as well. You've got English that you can use, but you can also then use Hindi as one example then of another choice that you might have. So the major language then that you choose then is going to be one of the truths for your PC, and it's going to be then the mother tongue of your PC. So if it's not a language that's going to be common amongst the other players then, you want to make sure then that one of the languages you have later on, as you have the opportunity for some bonus languages, make sure one of them is a common language amongst everyone. And again, remember, you don't just always have to be your standard American or British. We have French resistance, we have Dutch resistance. You have then the various colonies as well. So don't be afraid to kind of branch out and try some of those other ones, because I think it might add a little bit something extra then to your kind of your gameplay as a part of that. Okay, so now that we've got the nationality down, we've got our archetype down, we've got our basic kind of beginning attributes down, we want to then look at our backgrounds and our characteristics. I kind of lump these two things together, even though they are step 4 and step 5, because the process is still going to be very much the same in how it is that we're going to do this. So step 4 then is the background. Again, it's part of role-playing, but also provides then a lot of stats bonuses. There are 20 options of different backgrounds to kind of choose from, and you can find them then on page 67 to 71. There's a lot of variety. There's a part of them, things like academics, Air Force, criminal, physician, police, spiritual leader, etc. So those are some choices you have. Again, like your archetype, then there's going to be bonuses to attributes and skills. And we'll take a look at that, what one of them looks like in just a minute. We get 2 focuses then. One of them is going to be specified from a specific category that it would need to be from, but the other then is kind of a free choice for you to kind of take a look at in terms of choosing a focus from what we saw on pages 48 to 51. And then as a part of your background now, you're going to be choosing a talent. And with each of these, it's going to kind of give you a kind of a necessary kind of keyword, and we'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. And those then correspond to the various talents that are available in Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is just all about talents. So if you're wanting to kind of delve really, really deep deep in them and kind of look at all of them in terms of kind of preparation. But for this, when you've already made your archetype and you've chosen your background, so it's going to kind of narrow things down just for you a little bit, and so you can kind of focus then specifically on those. So just an example then, let's take a look then at the entertainer. And the entertainer then has the keyword of persuasion. So let's take a look at those. Those are on pages 91 and 92. So let's go ahead and jump over to there. Take a look at those. Take a look at those real quick. So we have down at the bottom here, persuasion. So we have a couple of different choices to kind of choose from, and there's more on the next page. We'll take a look at those as well. So you notice then it says we have just choosing then an answer for everything, just because the first one says keyword persuasion. So we know we're in the right spot, so we can choose one of these. You relish an intense debate where you can see your opponent's arguments unfold, then turn it back against them. When you succeed at a persuasion task, as part of an extended task, you may reroll a number of challenge dice equal to your persuasion skill. Okay, so that would be the thing you'd write out kind of in the effect on a persuasion test as part of an extended task. Reroll a number of challenge dice equal to your persuasion skill. Just to look at kind of the next page as well, because that's more persuasion over there. Subtle clues, again, keyword persuasion. You're good at knowing what people are thinking, spotting to all those little cues they give away in their posture, gestures, and tone of voice, and you're good at faking those cues as well. If you spend some time conversing with or observing someone, when you make a persuasion test against them during the current scene, so it's not part of an extended task, it's just part of the test during the scene, you may reduce the cost of the first d20 you purchased to 0. So looks like you're getting a free d20 without needing to spend any momentum or spending any fortune points as well. So after you've chosen your talent, then you then would add another truth. So we already have then the truth of your nationality, your truth of your language, and now you're choosing then also a truth connected to your background as well. So for instance, in the choice of an entertainer, what truth might that be? Could it be that you were a famous a singer beforehand? Okay, well, that might cause some problems when you're behind the line because you might be recognized. Or it might be a truth that's related to, as part of your experience as an entertainer, you saw something that didn't quite seem right with you. And so that gave you then kind of a little bit of an look into the other world, the other realm, into the mythos itself. So see, you can play with those truths then, but they wouldn't need to be something that fits then with the category of the background that you have. In addition then to that, you would do any belongings or any contacts that you might have as a part of that as well. Again, let's take a look then, because I think explaining by kind of looking directly at them might be a little bit better. So let's go ahead and take a look then at let's choose Army, which is on page 67. So let's go to page 67 real quick. Okay, so again, we're seeing kind of how this works itself out. And I'll make it just a little bit bigger and pull it over. Okay, Army, you belong to one of the armies of the Allied nations. This might be as an infantryman, but armies are a big organization with a wide array of different jobs, from tanking artillery crews to logistics and technical personnel. So basically, any job in the Army, you can have it. This background also covers groups like Royal Marines and U.S. Marine Corps who have advanced training in combat and rapid deployment. So what do you get? Again, bonuses, attributes and skills, agility, brawn, up 2, coordination and will, up 1, skills, athletics, and tactics, up 1, fighting, up 2. And so it's, again, this kind of changes and depends upon which one that you choose, but those are the ones in this particular category. Then your focuses, choose one focus from fighting and one focus from any other skill. Talents, choose one talent with a fighting keyword. And then it gives us some examples of truths that you might be able to kind of have. Choose a truth from the list or create a truth relating to your service in the Army. If you're going to create a truth related to your service in the Army, not from the list, you really probably want to just kind of run it by your GM, just so they have a kind of an idea of how it is that they might be able to kind of work that into the game, because they're not just meant to just be flowers on the wall. They're really meant to be a part of the game. And so letting then your GM kind of know what they are so they can kind of work them into the game is really, really important. But we have a trained marksman, a paratrooper, deadly commando, right? So those would kind of come in handy. You know, if you're fighting something or paratrooping in, okay, yeah, definitely going to be helpful. And then as a belongings, you gain an ammo belt. And so you can look down in the equipment to kind of see then where that ammo belt kind of fits in and kind of what's the additions that are going to be given to you for that. Okay, and let's now take a look then at the part 5, step. What are we at? Step 5. Yeah, step 5. So we've looked then at the backgrounds. Now we're going to take a look then at characteristics. Now characteristics, much smaller box up above me, but it's because it's very similar to background. The choices are going to aid the backstory, going to help you with the role playing, but again, they're also going to provide you some of those bonuses. There are 21 different types of characteristics then that you can choose from. All are going to be found on pages 72 to 77 in the player's guide. And they kind of vary from kind of a bookworm to someone that's wanted by authorities. And we'll, again, as we've seen with everything else, we'll take a look at one of them in just a minute. It fills out very much like your background. You get your attribute and skill bonuses. There's associated talents to go with it. Again, you're going to create a truth that's related to your experience as a with that particular characteristics. You're going to get any belongings or contacts as a part of it. Now, one of the things you probably noticed that I didn't say is you do not get a focus as a part of your characteristic. You're kind of done with focuses then at this point. But it is what it is. So let's now take a look then at what one of them might be. So let's take a look then at one of your characteristics. Let's choose read from an occult book. So let's take a look at that. That is on page 75. So let's just jump to 75 real quick. See, and just some other choices. Raised in the colonies is one of them. Own an occult artifact, nomad. Here we go. Read from an occult book. At some point in your past, you read from a forbidden book which revealed horrific secrets in the strange mysteries of the universe. Okay, so entering into the occult. You don't remember exactly what you read, but the sensation of viewing those sigils and readings, those words still lingers like a faint scar on the mind. You seem to notice things and make connections that others without your hidden knowledge overlook. Okay, and so again, we see then attribute and skill bonuses, insight, will, and +1 to any other attribute. Observation, resilience, and +1 to 2 other skills. All right, but no skill can be chosen twice. You can't bump it up 2. It's really about noticing, getting to 1. And if you look then, just take a quick peek at the one right above us, which I believe was Raising the Colonies. Again, it's +1, +1, and +1, +1 to any other 2 skills. So at this stage, you're really getting just ones added to it, to specific areas then of what we're looking at. And then again, you see then the talent then that's going to be associated with this one. This one in particular is about weird keywords, and there is a section in talents on weird keywords. Truth, use the read from an occult book truth or make up your own related to your harrowing occult knowledge. Again, if it's not going to be the specific title of this truth, then you might want to make sure you kind of just cover it with your GM just to make sure that they're okay with everything that goes on. Then you have a collection of personal notes from an occult tome that are part then of your belongings that have kind of been added to your experience, basically. And so then that takes us then directly to step 6, which is kind of what's called the finishing touches. One of the first things you want to do is a little bit of math. So there's a bit of a quick kind of checklist to make sure you've got everything that you're kind of looking for as you're going through, particularly even if you're not following this step. This last one is one that you want because it kind of reminds you, okay, I need this, make sure those are there. So we see then our attributes that are there. You need at least 6 in everything, because remember, that's what you started with, so it should never be lower than 6. Everyone needs to have at least 6. None should be higher than 11, though. Okay, so that's kind of the range then for starting off the characters, and if you add them all up together, that should then get you to 51. Going down to skills, none higher than a 5. All right, some of them even might still be stuck down at 0, but none of them should be higher than a 5. Adding them all together, of course, that should come up to a 17. So kind of a quick, easy way to kind of look at those. Focuses should be 4 of them. 2 of them, remember, you get from your archetype, and 2 of them you get from your background. The talents that you chose, there should be a total of 3, 1 each from archetype, background, and characteristics. All right, and then we go to our truths. Again, total of 4. 2 from your nationalities, that's the heritage that you chose and the language that you chose, and then 1 from your background and 1 from your characteristics. That's just a little bookkeeping stuff to kind of make sure everything else that you had done before is where it needs to be. But then there's this section then on kind of preparation for the magic users. Okay, now not everyone's going to be a magic user at character creation, but I'm talking then specifically when we're dealing with magic users as a part of creation. All right, you would need to have chosen then the kind of the occultist archetype, which is you can find that on page 60, kind of the details of what all that entails, and 1 talent with the spellcaster keyword. So that's either one that's on page 60, or there is one on page 96 as a part of the talents under weird. Remember, we talked about for someone who read an occult book, one of the options, they need to choose something from the weird category. This is one of them for occult dabbler, which is on page 96, which can only have 1 spellcaster talent as a part then of character creation. So just kind of be aware of how that kind of works it out. Now, if you've if you've kind of met then the criteria for having magic, then you want to choose the way that you learned your magic. And there's 3 different ways. And for kind of a really detailed explanation, I do have a 2-part video that I did on on magic in the 2d20 system that goes into a lot more detail. This is just part of character creation, how this is kind of working. So how you learn magic. You have tradition, you have research, and dabbling. Okay, so let's talk about what each of those are. Tradition is kind of a family or tribal connection to kind of magic. And then that's broken down into subcategories. You have rune weaving, which is more the kind of the Nordic connection, Druidism, which is kind of the Celtic tradition, and then the psychic or psionic tradition, which is kind of more, at least as it's kind of explained in the player's guide, more kind of the American way of doing it. Now, you have to choose one of these because that's going to be important if you're going to be a tradition magic user, because then that's kind of limiting what your spell book, your spell list that you can use is based upon that. Now, your spell casting ability is going to be based on insight. So if you're going this route, you might want to make sure your kind of insight attributes kind of bumped up a little bit as best you can. You have a base power then of when you're rolling your challenge dice as a part of your casting of spells of 2. And you start then with having known 3 spells from the tradition from which you came. Now, the researcher then, they learn spells via kind of intense study of the occult. So it's something you went out and you were looking for, and this has kind of been the way that you saw of getting power. In the chapter on magic, it talks about this having some concerns, because then people can become too obsessed then with power and authority and kind of lose then track of some of the things in terms of what's important. The power becomes the magic, the occult becomes the more important thing than even maybe your larger mission that you're going after. So, but their spellcasting ability is going to be based on reason. So you want that ability to be a little bit higher if possible. And your base power, like in the tradition, spellcasters, is going to be a 2 challenge dice base power rating. You also start with 2 spells, but you can choose from any tradition or the mythos itself. So you're not as confined as part of that. But remember, there are some disadvantages as well to kind of being someone that's not steeped in the tradition of one of the different areas we have. And then we have the dabbler, which is someone who has experimented with magic without much guidance or without much understanding, kind of a little bit more kind of the amateur type of thing, not in the kind of a pejorative sense, but the one that doesn't know as much about it. And so that causes some problems specifically then with errant magic happening as well. So that spellcasting ability is going to be based on will, so make sure that one's high if you're going to go in this route, with a base power of 1 challenge dice. However, with a dabbler, you can increase up to 3 base power of challenge dice. However, though, that comes with some drawbacks because any effect roll does generate then threat for the GM as a part of that as well. However, they can choose from any spell. Any spells available to the PC. And possibly even some that aren't a part of the allied tradition. There are some other spells that you find in the Game Master's Guide that make sure you have your Game Master's permission before you choose any of those, but I don't see anything that would say that those are necessarily precluded, because it says you can have any from any tradition, all right? Because you're dabbling in it, you're finding things, you're experimenting, you're just going out and doing. So with your Game Master's permission, sure, head for some of those that you find in the Game Master's Guide as well. You start with either 1 spell or 2 flawed spells, and greater description on flawed spells, see page 144 of the Player's Guide. Okay. Back to everybody now at the moment. To kind of finish out and kind of round out your character, I mentioned a lot earlier, about bonus languages. And so this is then the opportunity to kind of do those. The GM may give you a free bonus language depending upon if it kind of fits in your background or not. The example that's given in the book is if you're kind of Italian-American ancestry, New York, Chicago, something like that, you might have some Italian, and so that might be something that was a part of one of the truths that the GM says, sure, okay, that's kind of fit. Or it could be some of the other cultures as well. So if you're Native American, well, maybe one of those Native American languages as well. There's the great tradition, particularly in the real world, Second World War, about the code talkers. If I remember correctly, I believe they were of the Navajo Nation, using the Navajo to kind of communicate, particularly in the Pacific, which was a code that the Japanese were not able to break. And so that might be then something that's a part of that as well, based upon the nationality background that you particularly have. But that's kind of with GM's permission as a part of that background. However, though, you do get then, based upon your reason, a bonus languages. So apart from any that might be a part of that discussion between you and the GM, 9 through 10, if your reason attribute is a 9 through 10, you get one extra language, okay? So that's probably, you want to make sure that you have a common language amongst everybody. Now, if you have an 11 or higher, you get 2 extra languages. So at that point, you might think, okay, I'm a French resistance fighter. I'm going to be working with a bunch of Americans and Brits, so I better get English. But let's get some German in. That might be helpful as well, considering we're fighting this secret war against the Germans. So just kind of an example of some of how that might necessarily play out. At the same time, there's those nationality languages that we talked about. But if we look on page 79 of the Player's Guide, you're going to find then a list of esoteric and kind of ancient languages as well that might come in handy as a part of that as too. Things like Atlantean or something more Sanskrit as another example, Latin, ancient Greek, any of those sorts of things. And the next thing that we do is we want to calculate our stress. Now, our stress is both mental and kind of physical damage endurance. And so it's kind of that level then by the point where you would then kind of pass out and not be able to kind of continue in the scene itself. So again, it's a number you kind of want to be having high. But it's one then, it's calculated in 2 different ways. And you want to choose whichever one then is going to be higher. It's either brawn plus resilience, or it's either will plus resilience. So we see one about your physicality and another about your mental abilities plus your resilience. So it's either one or the other, whichever is higher, of your attribute and skill kind of being added together. All right. After your skill calculation is made, then you want to do your resistance. Okay, and resistance, again, there's 2 types. Either you're going to have the physical kind or you're going to have the mental kind. And these are two different categories. All right, and it's going to be based upon your attribute rating in both brawn and will. Okay, and so if we take a look, let me just kind of show you where that fits at. And so if we take a look then back at our character sheet, and so if we take then a look, we have both courage here and then armor. Courage is your endurance against mental magical attacks. Armor then is the one about your physical attacks, and so that's where you would kind of put those. And those are the number of challenge dice that you get to kind of offset then any attacks that are going to be happening against you as a part of that. And so we could see then how that's calculated. It's based then specifically upon those attributes, and we see a little chart that I put over here. You can also find them then for resistance is on page 79, kind of from 0 to 5, how much extra you're going to get. Now this is in addition to any equipment or talents that you have that's going to boost either your courage or your armor rating up. All right, so it stacks. In other words, you're getting those extra bonuses upon anything you're getting from talents or any of the equipment that you might have. And then after that is the kind of the bonus damage that you're able to do. Again, it's based upon based upon your attribute rating in various categories. So melee is going to be brawn, range is going to be insight, and your magic or mental is going to be from will. All right, now regardless of school, doesn't matter if you're academic or if you're a traditionalist or you're a dabbler, all are going to be using will for your bonus damage of this particular one. The chart for this one is on page 80 as well, and it varies then from 0 to 5 based upon what your attribute ratings are in those particular categories of being able to add then that extra little bit of challenge dice power to it. Now, finally, to the true finishing touches, okay, you would then kind of add your name, kind of some of that brief personality descriptors and appearances, and then you would choose then kind of your personal belongings, all right, and we're given then some options of the things that we can have. Now, this is in addition to anything that you gain because of any of your backgrounds or characteristics or your archetypes or anything like that. This is now your personal belongings, all right. 1 item with a restriction of 3, 2 items with a restriction of 2, and 1 item with a restriction of 1. Now, if you're wondering, well, what does that mean? Part of that then has to do with the kind of availability of it would be to your character, etc. Now, the equipment then that you can choose from is going to be found then on chapter 7 of the Player's Guide, and we can take kind of a quick look over there. Let's see, and that is on page 97. So if we go over then to Tools of the Trade, and we kind of see where that's at. Because if you notice then, let's see, we'll skip down to some of this. Some of this I'll talk about in a later video, but just to kind of give you an idea. Okay, so here we go. This is for common melee weapons. When I was talking about those restriction ratings, we can see them over then on the right side as well. Let me just zoom in a little bit more so we can get a little bit better of a look at that real quick. So Axir, just as an example, because it is the very first one, has a restriction rating of 2. But if we go down, we have some restriction rating of 1. But if we go down then to this first 2 down here, which is going to be a garrote, gives you another option of something that you can kind of choose, just a hand-to-hand combat. So notice we see focuses here. All right, so these are the focuses that are necessary in order for you to use these particular melee style weapons. Now it's not just these melee weapons, you have all sorts of other things to choose from as well. You have the exotic melee ranged weapons as well. Let me go back down to an easier. All right, so we got some handguns, pistols, Brownings, service revolver, pistols, revolver, okay, and there are as well, so just in case you're wondering, there are rifles and shotguns, and there are then what we would kind of consider machine guns as well. Again, notice these are all in the restriction rating of 3, a couple of them are 2. So that's kind of what we're talking about, and it's not just all weapons and things like that, there's other things you can choose from as well. If I remember correctly, there should be some examples of armor belongings. So there's some of these kits as well that you can kind of choose. So if you are an entertainer, maybe a disguise kit might be something to choose from. Or if you were a criminal, maybe you might want that burglar's tools as well. Notice these are all kind of mostly restriction ratings of 1, but there are some of the restriction rating 2. So for equipment, then you want to make sure you take a look then at Chapter 7. I think that kind of covers then kind of the basics. We'll talk later about, well, how it is that you level up. I'm just talking, all right, what's the basics that we need in order to get into creating characters, and I think that's going to kind of finish it up, because I think this video is getting a little bit long in the tooth for that. But thanks for joining me. If you have any questions about anything that I've shown you in terms of character creation, if I made a mistake, because I think in this process we're all kind of learning this together. This is a new game. They're still in the process of putting these games out for people to kind of take a look at, and the physical books aren't even in our hands yet, and so even the page numbers I reference might change. I'm going off of the PDF that I have from the pre-production PDF that was sent then to backers of the game. But any questions, comments, issues, please put it down in the comments down below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel if you like the content. I'm all about then trying to look at different types of role-playing games and try to learning all together. So thanks for joining me, and until next time.